Thinking Out Loud with Dave Palmer. Here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and we are talking with Dave Palmer on Thinking Out Loud here, how understanding the vocation of the Blessed Virgin Mary can teach about the Harrison Butker controversy. Good morning and welcome, Dave.
Good morning, Keith. Good to be with you again this morning.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like there's three parties or camps out there: those who agree with everything Harrison said, those who partly agree but aren't really pleased with his tone or how he said certain things, and those who apparently didn't listen or read what he said and are just offended by it for some reason. So I'm curious to see how we can talk about how the vocation of the Blessed Mary, Virgin Mary, can teach about this controversy.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Keith. And I for some reason, this speech that he gave has been very, I don't know, it's impacted me a lot. I guess one of the reasons is because I have a daughter at Benedictine. My daughter just completed her freshman year there. And so it's very personal, the school itself, because I've been there and I'm familiar with it. And I love the college. It's wonderful. And I love what President Minnis is doing there. Mm-hmm. I also have some friends who were present at the speech. I was talking to them after Mass on Sunday. And so I got their take. And I've also had a chance to speak to a lot of young women in particular, including my daughters, about what they thought about it. So anyways, I come to this segment with having done a bit of research. And one thing I find, and overall, I thought it was outstanding. Like you said, I think there are maybe a few areas that he could have rephrased or nuances that maybe could have said a little bit differently. But I think you could say that about any speech, right? Absolutely. And I guess my first take in how this talk could be related to the Blessed Mother. Well, first of all, I've read through the script and I've watched the script, and I don't think he ever mentions the Blessed Mother in the talk. He talks about Saint Jose Maria Escrivá. He talks about Saint Damien of Malachi. But I don't think there's any reference. And I don't think that's on purpose. I think it just happens that he didn't mention. But I think one of the great tie-ins between the Blessed Mother and this speech is that I firmly believe that his goal and purpose with regard to motherhood and wives was to exalt those roles. I think he really, and if you need any evidence of that, just look at how he spoke about his own wife, Isabel. And he could not have spoken more glowingly about her, and not only her, but her role in his success. And so I think immediately when you see the exaltation of his wife, you would immediately think of the Blessed Mother. We're talking about humility today. Harrison Butker, as far as I could see, never mentioned the Kansas City Chiefs. He never mentioned his role as the kicker. He never mentioned Super Bowls or rings or anything like that. But what he did do was credit his wife for all of his success. And so I think that's the first place where you can read into this, the Blessed Mother, because I think if you asked Harrison Butker, he would have said the same thing about the Blessed Mother and all of us, that we are dependent upon her intercession, her role as the Blessed Mother of God, and her and all the saints for our success. And so I think that's the first connection I would make to the Blessed Mother is, and often just like the speech is, he's being accused of lowering women. The Catholic Church is often accused of the same thing, but then we would say, well, by golly, look at the exaltation, the greatest creature to ever have lived, according to the Catholic Church, is a woman. And so that's my first take on that. Any thoughts on that, Keith?
Yeah, it's interesting because I initially read the transcripts before listening to it, and it's a different experience altogether because, like you said, the way he talks about his wife, I mean, at one point he kind of chokes up a bit talking about the conversion of his wife, and it's like, I would have missed that completely if I hadn't listened to him. And so, yeah, there is a real sense of humility when he's talking about his wife and what she does.
Yeah, and the longest applause, interestingly, was when he talked about his wife's role as a homemaker.
Right.
And even on the script, it says applause for 18 seconds. And so, but you're right. I have read the script several times, and I also watched the talk. I wasn't there, but the video of it. The other thing that I think we can take out of this as connected to the Blessed Mother is some people say, well, why did he address the women separately from the men? Why was there a different message for the women and the men? And I think in a culture where the culture wants to say men and women are exactly the same, and of course we believe when it comes to dignity, inherent dignity, that that's certainly the case. But there is a difference. There is a difference between men and women, and I think this highlights this. And I also am happy that for the last week and a half or since the talk, most of the national conversation has been about marriage and about vocations and about his talk. And I think that has exalted the conversation. Even if people don't like what he said, at least they're talking about it. And I also think it's kind of ironic that one of the things is he talks about promotions and titles within careers. And who has more titles than the Blessed Mother? I mean, think about, and some of them are like the mediatrix of all graces, and of course the Theotokos, the Mother of God, being the most important one. And so anyways, I think there's a lot to take out of this, but one other take would just be that, and I think he kind of gets at this in the talk, is that motherhood and fatherhood and being a husband, being a wife, it's a calling. It's discernment. It's something that God gives us, and not everybody's vocation is going to be the same. And he recognized that he said some of you women are going to go on to successful careers. He didn't say all of you are going to be mothers, all of you are going to be wives. And I think that all of us, men, women, have to discern very carefully, what does God want? And with the Blessed Mother, it was made very clear, because she literally had an angel that visited her to ask her for her consent to carry out the most important role any person has ever carried out in the history, any creature, that for that matter, in the history of the world. So I think there's a real message there of not all of our vocations are the same, but all of us need to discern carefully what God wants us to do in our lives.
Yeah, that's very impactful. And just thinking too, when I was working in the corporate world of corporate America, there's two things that I noticed very interesting. It was very interesting to me. First, any type of my coworkers that obviously female would get pregnant, they would start working after they've come back, maybe 3 months, and then a high percentage of them would end up leaving. And I don't know if it's they're going to another job, but they would just leave. And so I thought that was very interesting. And then there are some women that, when I worked in leadership positions, that also had families and that were continuing to have more children. And so I thought that was very interesting too, that there were some women that I guess you'd call them more high power leadership roles that would be still having children. So it's interesting. It's the culture that we live in. And I think too, it almost was like a cold glass of water to the face for many that haven't heard this message out there. And obviously we see the reaction online, like, because the message was so shocking for some people, they just stopped listening and were only focusing on things that maybe not he didn't even say, but just the shocking amount of, like, yeah, women's vocation as a mother is more important than you're climbing the ladder, the corporate ladder.
Yeah, and the part on motherhood, the part about his wife, it really was 2 paragraphs of a much larger speech. I think if you really want to look at the overall message of what he was getting at, if you could kind of boil it down, he was really talking about being unapologetically Catholic. I think that's what he really wanted to get across. He talked at the end about living in a post-God world. And of course, that has echoes of like Friedrich Nietzsche to me, God is dead. And of course, he would have come at this in a very, very different, well, he doesn't mean that God is dead like Nietzsche, said, But I think what he means is that people are not focused as much on God. We're living in a world where it's different. That the Christian influence is not as strong as it used to be, and that's all the more reason that we need to be strong and lean into our vocation, as he talked about, lean into our Catholicism. And what better advocate are we going to have than the Blessed Mother? And I love one of the lines that got people so riled is he said, "I guess that the majority of you women are most excited about your marriage and the children that you will bring into this world." And I think he's right. And he didn't say all of you, but I think, probably if you'd taken a poll afterwards, and he got a standing ovation, and most of the women that I have seen, young and old, that have commented on social media, at least the ones in the circles that I am in, have been overall very positive about what he said. So anyways, there's a lot to take from it, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that too, because, and I didn't know about this until recently, obviously with the speech, but my wife, when we first got married, she was going through nursing school, and she just recently told me that she was more excited at the prospect of having a family than completing her nursing education. And I had no idea about that until this whole speech came through. So it was very interesting, and I really appreciate you bringing this up, Dave. Because, even though it happened, a week or so ago, it's still incredibly important to talk about when it comes to us being authentically, unapologetically Catholic. So thank you so much, Dave. Always every single Tuesday talking about, well, things that we certainly need to talk about, thinking out loud with you. So appreciate that.
Thank you, Keith. Good to be with you.
Yeah, likewise. And then we can always catch you on Back to the Father every single Friday at 1 p.m. Central on GRN Online YouTube. Make sure to watch. It's a very fun, interactive show where we get to go even deeper into the Summa. So make sure to put that on your calendar for the time being. But hey, this is really kind of the ending of our first hour. Can you believe it? This hour went by incredibly fast. Now, you might be staying, and if you are staying for the entirety of the show, well, stay tuned. There's a lot coming up. But if this is us parting ways, just a quick reminder to make sure to go and follow on all the social medias. So we're talking YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter. Am I missing it? I keep wanting to say LinkedIn. Maybe we'll get on LinkedIn someday. I don't know. But follow us, Morning Joy Show or GRN Online, because they produce us. So make sure to follow us. But tomorrow on Morning Joy at this time, we're going to be talking with Cecil Anderson on fruitful living. So make sure to tune in tomorrow. But if you're staying with us, like I said, we're going to be talking so much more on the next hour with Rob Kazmark. He's a CEO and founder of Spirit Juice Studios, talking about evangelizing with high quality video and content. So otherwise, if this is us parting ways, well, hey, have a blessed day. You know what? Make it a joyful day. We'll see you right after this break on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.